Okay, is this thing on? Hi, everybody. And by everybody, I mean nobody. I don't know. This is brand new for me, so everybody be cool as I try and figure out what this is. I'm streaming on Twitch. Sure. Hi. For those who don't know me, I'm Gospel. There's a very funny reason for that. We're going to talk about it later. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm a tall, bald, white dude. I'm wearing a t-shirt. I am standing on lands historically occupied by the Lenni Lenape people. Just acknowledge that for just a moment. And I'm trying something today of all days. I've been saying for years that I wanted to do this thing where I took my sermon preparation process and streamed it on Twitch. And lo and behold, today of all days, I'm here. And you all, if you're here along for the ride, thank you for joining me. I don't know what this is yet. We'll see how this works today. We'll see what I learn and what happens going forward. But I am preaching again at a church in Jersey next week. So this will happen at least twice. And if I get into a rhythm of it, we'll do it more than that. And we'll see what happens from there. So, welcome. If you are not from a Christian tradition or are from a Christian tradition and the church has failed you, or if you have no idea any of the words that I just said, welcome. We're trying this thing out. I will try and stop and slow down and explain exactly what it is that I'm doing from a liturgical or a churchy perspective when it is necessary to do so. And other than that, a lot of this is just going to be me talking at the camera and going, what is happening in the Greek here, or the Hebrew, or whatever I'm working on this week. So it's going to be an interesting ride. So thank you for joining me. A little bit more about me, just to give some context to what's happening. My name, I said I was going to explain it later. I thought it might be much later. My name is Matthew Marcus Luke John Stone. All of the Christians on the stream just chuckled because it is very funny that my full name is an important section of the Bible. There are 4 books of the Bible that collectively are called the Gospels, and they are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And my name is the Gospels in order. It's very, very funny. My parents were very, very funny, and I have leaned into the joke. I am an ordained Presbyterian pastor, serving currently as a member at large in Presbytery of Donegal. I went to seminary at Princeton Theological Seminary for 3 years, and I did 3.5 years of full-time ordered ministry and have dipped my toe into side hustle ministry ever since. And this is yet another dipping of my toe into side hustle ministry. For today, I am a guy who is trying to figure out what to say to a group of people who he doesn't know. I am preaching what's called pulpit supply at a church in Jersey. I don't know these people, so I don't know how they feel about the election and how the world and the country are going. I have no idea. So I need to elegantly create a sermon that sort of addresses that ambiguity, which mirrors the ambiguity that I'm feeling on a day when I had my non-preferred candidate win an election pretty resoundingly, and I need to deal with what that means. I need to come to terms with that. They told me in seminary that when you preach a sermon and you get your finger out into the faces of the congregation, 3 fingers, 1 finger is pointing out, but 3 fingers are pointed back at you. So this is actually, as much as it's a sermon for the folks I'm going to be working with, it is also definitely a sermon for me. So when I am prepping a sermon, I need the following things. Now, often I do what's called the lectionary, and somebody else chooses the parts of the Bible that I'm going to preach from. On this particular day, I'm throwing that out the window because I got a particular message I need to preach. And that means that I need to make sure that I need a lesson from the Hebrew Bible. My Jewish brothers and sisters, this is for you. This is a section that reaches back into the historical tradition. I need 1 lesson from what are called the Gospels. That is, as I said, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Something that Jesus said or did. And I need a title for the sermon. And I might or might not need on any given Sunday. I might or might not need the psalm and the epistle. In this particular case, they got the psalm covered. Don't have to worry about that. They've got it handled at this church. And I got to decide whether or not to include one of the epistles as part of my setup for this week. And then I have already, this is the wrong order. This is not the way that you're supposed to do this. But I have already the hook for the sermon. I know what I'm going to talk about, and it is Solomon's ring. Not the seal of Solomon, which is a whole mystical Kabbalah thing that people have feels about, but the other Solomon's ring. Yeah, as I got to figure out how the green screen works because I've now turned deeply transparent, and it's very funny. All right, so the search here is, and I'm probably gonna. I loved this article from Avi Solomon on Medium. This covered a whole bunch of the bases of this text. Wow, I'm really, really, really pale. Yeah, I got to figure out how OBS works, and I can't change the filters while I'm. Oh no, wait, filters, chroma key, filters, chroma key, grain, smoothness, 80. Okay, it's better. It's fuzzy, but that's better. I'm no longer Santa Claus in reverse colors. Okay. So this is an Avi Solomon's article here was really, really great. Go give it a read. But I'm going to do the Abraham Lincoln version of this quote. It is said an Eastern monarch once charged his wise men to invent him a sentence to be ever in view, and which should be true and appropriate in all times and situations. They presented him the words, "And this, too, shall pass away." How much it expresses, how chastening in the hour of pride, how consoling in the depths of affection. And this was from an address Abraham Lincoln gave before the Wisconsin State Agricultural Society on September 30th of 1859. I am not going to do the full dive here because the Wikipedia hole is deep and wide. But Wikipedia goes into the fact that this historically seems to be a Persian story out of modern day Iran. But it sort of made the rounds of the Middle East and even into the modern day. I heard it first. The first time I remember hearing it was actually in a song that was the weather for Night Vale. Welcome to Night Vale. Sponsor me, man. I'll give you the name drop. In a weather song for Welcome to Night Vale, which was about cancer. And I will not try and pull it up. I'll try and put it in the description, links, stuff later. But this too shall pass. This is the sort of condensed formulation that shows up. This too shall pass. That's the thing that I'm going to preach on. Specifically, when I first heard it interpreted, the key factor was what Lincoln expresses here, that for a person who is happy, this is bad news. And for a person who is sad, this is good news. And in all situations, it is applicable to help one remember that everything is transient, everything is temporary, we are only here briefly. And things will change hereafter in some way or other. I have definite opinions about how. But the key point being that things will change. It will be different. And things will, I sometimes express this as the wheel never stops turning. Things come and go. But this too shall pass. So that's my text. That's the hook that I'm going to use. And I usually come at this the other direction and rely on the scriptures for the week as the hook. But this week, this is the message. This is where we're going to go. So I asked myself, what are the scriptures that support or are in conversation with this particular text? And the first thing I am going to go to is to the book of Job. My preferred Bible webpage is Bible Gateway. Sponsorship. Hit me up. For a variety of reasons, but one of the key ones is because they do a great job on a variety of translations. The Hebrew Bible text we're going to go with for this particular sermon is probably from Job. And if you're not familiar with Job, it is the story of a dude who gets completely screwed by God, who is doing very well. He's very, very happy. He's very blessed. And God just absolutely rogers him for no other reason than to sort of win an argument. It is theologically problematic in the extreme. It's fascinating portrayal both of God and of Hasatan, the adversary, who's called Satan, and sort of a very different perspective than you've ever heard on this. So I recommend Job for anybody who's having a bad day, or really a bad month. It is a wonderful moment to stop and say, what does it mean to suffer? What does it mean when bad things happen to people? Not just good people, but people. When bad things happen, what does it mean? And how do we deal with it? So I'm going to skip over the sort of God and Satan talking about exactly how they're going to get this guy, Job. But we're going to start with the sort of story of what was happening. Job is very, very well off. He has 7 sons, 3 daughters. He owns 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys. This guy is well-to-do, a sort of Middle Eastern billionaire, as these things go. Job and Satan, God and Satan have this whole conversation about what they're going to do with Job, and then Job has this happen to him. So starting Job chapter 1, starting at verse 13. One day when Job's sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, a messenger came to Job and said, "The oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing nearby, and the Sabaeans attacked and made off with them. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, "The fire of God fell from the heavens and burned up the sheep and the servants, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, "The Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties and swept down on your camels and made off with them. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you." While he was yet speaking, yet another messenger came and said, "Your sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, when suddenly a mighty wind swept in from the desert and struck the 4 corners of the house. It collapsed on them, and they are dead. And I am the only one who has escaped to tell you." At this, Job got up and tore his robe and shaved his head. Then he fell to the ground in worship and said, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised." In all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. That's part 1. And I'm not gonna do that full text when we do the Sunday sermon, because it's a lot. So then Job and Satan, I keep saying that, God and Satan have this other conversation where they're like, "Well, you took all Job's property, but he's fine. So what happens if you make him suffer?" Satan has this great line, "Skin for skin." So we're going to skip over that. God says, "Fine, do whatever you're going to do to him, but don't kill him." Satan goes out. So this is Job chapter 2, starting at verse 7. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and afflicted Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. Then Job took a piece of broken pottery, the older texts have a potsherd, and scraped himself with it as he sat among the ashes. And his wife said to him, "Curse God." And his wife said to him, I got really excited about the next part. His wife said to him, "Are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die." And he replied, "You are talking like a foolish woman. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?" And in all this, Job did not sin in what he said. And this was the line that sat with me. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble? That's the sticker here, is that people are overjoyed to pray to God for parking spaces and winning the lottery and whatever, but they're not willing to accept that sometimes bad things happen, and either God is powerful, ruler of the universe, or God is not. And what do we do? I will say out loud right now that this is not like easy for anybody to struggle with. Like the easy answer is to just eat yourself out of the conversation and say bad stuff happens, good stuff happens. No one knows why. But we crave meaning, and certainly for me, I crave my God to give me meaning to these terrible things that happen. So, what do we do with that? So I think that this is all in prep for like what texts am I going to send to this church to put in the bulletin so that I know what I'm going to preach on Sunday. I do want to take a moment and talk about this one. So this is the new, I'm pretty sure, this is the New International Version. There are a bunch of different translations of the Bible, each of which chooses different emphases or focuses. They range from extremely conversational, like The Message, to what many of you might have grown up with, the King James Version, which is all the these and thous and like the Shakespeare talk. The NIV tends to have one perspective. It's one of the most common translations. I went to school on the New Revised Standard Version, the NRSV, which apparently we have the updated edition rather than just the NRSV. Interesting. That's new. So when you're preaching, it's best for you to select. Say like know a little bit about your translations and be aware that any given translation you work with is going to have decisions that somebody made. So I tend to favor the Common English Bible, which is very deliberately simplified, not simple, but simplified, sort of easily accessible vocabulary. That's my preferred translation. Notice that we have lost Satan and we now have the adversary, which is a pretty good translation of what the name means. So then, the adversary departed, struck Job with severe sores. Job took a piece of broken pottery to scratch himself, and his wife said, "Are you still clinging to your integrity? Curse God and die." And there's a nice little footnote here that I'm imagining he's going to say, "or bless." In the actual Hebrew, if you go read it, the word here is the root is baruch, bless, to speak well, to speak a blessing, to hope well for someone. And the thing is, in the Bible, you can't curse God. That's a rule. You're not allowed to do that. So anytime that anybody would say curse God, instead, at one point, the scribes said, no, that's obviously, you can't do that. So they wrote in, instead of curse, bless. Some of the oldest witnesses have the other text. But it's this wonderful thing of like, what does it mean to be respectful of God, especially in circumstances when God is apparently out to get you? And there's a whole other, like Job is doing a whole other thing. But I just love that nice little ambiguity of things you are and are not allowed to say and what it means to curse or to bless. Because as anyone who has played 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons knows, you have bless and you have bane, and they do the same things in reverse. All right, so the text, so the question is, again, what is the text that I'm going to hand to the church? And I think what I'm going to do, I have two choices here. I can just give out the Job 2, 7 through 10. The adversary departed through, in all this, Job didn't sin with his lips. Or I can do both. Job 1, the song, the little song that Job sings. Job's piety and life of bliss. Nice little headings here. Naked I came from my mother's womb, naked I will return there. The Lord is given, the Lord is taken. Bless the Lord, name of the Lord. So I can do either Job 1 or Job 2, or I can do Job 1 and 2. I'm going to give that some thought. I'm going to write in on the notes that it's either Job 1, and my text is, I think, probably 18. I got to tell you, a whole bunch, I have not been preaching consistently since my baby was born. And a lot of stuff hits different now. A lot of stuff hits really different. Lord is given, the Lord is taken, bless the Lord's name. So I think we're going to do, I'm going to do 18, but the idea of all of my kids, I only have the one, but the idea of all of my kids are out partying, and the wind comes up and takes all of them away from me all at once. It's different. It's something. All right. So Hebrew Bible lesson, either Job 1, 18 to 22, or Job 2. What was the Job 2? It's either or Job 2, 7 through 10. Poor Job's wife. She, it's her kids too. And it's her husband that's gotten all knobbly in the skin. She's the one that feel for Job's wife. That's all I'm saying. Or both. Okay, so we'll give that some thought, which ones we're going to do. And then we're going to do the gospel lesson. Again, Bible Gateway. Hit me up, Bible Gateway. I'll take a sub. I will talk at Bible Gateway. That's pretty good access. And for a fairly reasonable price. I got another one that I may dip into later that kind of does a better job on the Greek and the Hebrew, which becomes relevant later. All right, so we need a gospel lesson. The default answer for the Gospels, pretty straightforward, is the bit where God is preaching on, where Jesus specifically, Jesus, also God, where Jesus is preaching on worry. And who by worrying. So I'm gonna take a dive here. I'm gonna take a guess, and I'm gonna say that this is Matthew 5, and that's the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, salt and light, Jesus in the law of murder, law of adultery, law of divorce, solemn pledges, retaliation, law of love. There's a possibility that I'm just flat wrong and it's not actually in the Sermon on the Mount. We're gonna find out. Showy religion, showy prayer, proper prayer, showy fasting. Guys, don't do it. Worry about necessity. Boom. Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 6. Nailed it. Seminary was a long time ago. I graduated from seminary in 2011. 13 years ago. All right. So the frame is a little funny here because this would be a really long speech to give and for somebody to have written down. And the good scholarship that is that Jesus, this is the people who wrote down what Jesus said, this is them collecting all of his greatest hits into one section so that it's pretty easy to digest. And, stuff gets lost in translation, and we do our best with what we've got. But this is Jesus on worry, and one of my favorite verses. This is definitely in conversation with some of the Buddhist tradition and just sort of acceptance and mindfulness. This is a very mindfulness text. So let's talk about it. Matthew chapter 6, starting at verse 25. Therefore I say to you, don't worry about your life, what you'll eat or what you'll drink, or about your body, what you'll wear. Isn't life more than food and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds in the sky. They don't sow seed or harvest grain or gather crops into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Aren't you worth much more than they are? Who among you by worrying can add a single moment to your life? And why do you worry about clothes? Notice how the lilies in the field grow. They don't wear themselves out with work, and they don't spin cloth. But I say to you that even Solomon in all of his splendor wasn't dressed like one of these. Nice callback to Solomon again. If God dresses grass in the field so beautifully, even though it's alive today and tomorrow it's thrown into the furnace, won't God do much more for you, you people of weak faith? Therefore, don't worry and say, what are we going to eat, or what are we going to drink, or what are we going to wear? Gentiles long for all these things. Sorry, Gentiles, that's us. Your heavenly Father knows that you need them. Instead, desire first and foremost God's kingdom and God's righteousness, and all these things will be given you as well. Therefore, stop worrying about tomorrow, because tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. This is good. This is not the passage I thought I was going to get. And that means that I need to check something specific. Don't judge. Don't judge, bros. Don't do it. So the thing I was looking for was about who, by worrying, can change the color of a single hair. So did I just add a single hour to his life? Add a cubit to his stature. Am I making up the hair color thing? Oh man, I'm crossed over. All right. So Matthew is the classic version of the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, and all these pieces. But Luke has something very similar in chapter 12. Yeah. So it's either a single hour to your life or a cubit to your height. And the gray hair thing is somewhere completely different. All right, I'm making stuff up. Here it is. Much earlier, and it's about a different thing. This is about don't swear by your own head because you can't change your hair. All right. Good to have the reminder, and good to remember always that memory is fallible. We're all fallible. We all make mistakes. We all have the opportunity to learn. Boom. All right, so this is the gospel that we're going to go for, though. I think this is one of the better ones in terms of this. Like, this is the watchword on Christ, and like, dude, slow your roll. Be chill. Don't wig out. You like, I think I'm probably going to throw my wife under the bus and say that my wife is a frequent. Not lender to, but borrower from the bank of trouble. That she's got a trouble credit card, and she's very happy to borrow trouble as much as she can, as often as she can. I'm like, no, you don't need to borrow the trouble. The trouble we'll get the trouble. We don't need to borrow any of it. So I'm going to do this text, and my temptation is to say that we're going to do all 25 through 34, 9 verses. That seems about right to me. So, and we're going to do Matthew because, frankly, because the Luke that we were looking at a minute ago cuts all the good stuff about each day, like this stuff at the end, stop worrying about tomorrow. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Luke skips all that. And if it's in Mark at all, it's almost certainly not in John. So for those keeping track at home for whom this is new, the four Gospels, each has its own sort of attitude on its own viewpoint. Each of the four Gospels has its own viewpoint. Matthew, Mark, and Luke tend to be pretty in alignment. Matthew is medium length. Mark is quite short and very social justice focused. Luke is a lot longer and is very into details and specifics. And then John is over here doing its completely own things. There's very few pieces that are in all four, but these three are called the synoptic or seen together Gospels. So if you've got a story from Matthew, there's a good chance it'll be in either Luke or Mark or both. If you've got a story from John, you're on your own. You're just going to have to figure that one out by yourself. And they'll have slightly different emphases and slightly different texts. And all of this has to do with how they were written down, when and where, and who did the writing. So we're going to do, I said, Matthew chapter 6, 25-34. I'm going to say out loud that I wish more things were as sort of well written down as how we communicate Bible verses to each other. It's very, very nice. The sermon title is this too. If I was going to do an epistle, and I'm not, because between Job and Matthew and the fact that I think I'm going to do both of them, the two Job passages, because otherwise it misses a bunch. Like, I like both of those little snippets, and they both need a little bit of context. I'm just going to do the Hebrew Bible and the Gospel lesson, and between that 9 verses and the other 9 verses, 18 verses, especially congregations I don't know, I tend not to just like throw the book at them. People who know me well, I will read massive tracts of scripture all at once, because I think context is always helpful. But if I was going to do an epistle lesson, I should turn this back on. Okay, so here's the thing that's going to happen. You guys will find that this happens. Anybody who follows this stream is going to find this happens a lot, is that every once in a while I'm going to stop and be like, hey, did you know? In the settings in Chrome, under search engine, you can manage search engines. You can add search engines. So I'm going to add a site search. And it's Bible Gateway. I'm going to add the shortcut BW. And then URL with %s in place of query. So I go over here and I say BibleGateway.com passage question search equals this bit right here, and specifically this bit right here. So I'm going to copy that whole URL, and where the search term is, I'm going to do %s. I'm going to add it. All right, and now when I go to my Chrome search bar and I do BW, I now hit space and it'll search Bible Gateway automatically. You can do this with YouTube. You can do this with most of the websites that you search on a regular basis. So fun fact, there you go. If I was going to do an epistle lesson, it would almost certainly be Philippians, I think it's 2. We're going to have a problem where I did spell Philippians correctly. I always worry. Sending Timothy. Nope, I'm early yet. And Philippians. Philippians is a very, very comforting letter that a dude named Paul wrote to his friends. In a particular, in the community of Philippi. Let's see here. I love anything that is excellent. This would be a good sort of second string. And this is a constant, like, if anything's excellent, admirable, focus your thoughts on those things that are true, holy, and just, pure, lovely, and worthy of praise. That's a pretty good one, but I am, again, the sort of duality of what we're looking at here, the pairing of this too shall pass. I am looking for good and bad. And so I'm going to go with Paul's thanks for gifts, which is absolutely not how I would have described this section. But this bit right here. I was very glad so this is Philippians chapter 4, starting at verse 10, probably through verse 13. I was very glad in the Lord, because now at last you have shown concern for me again. Of course, you were always concerned, but had no way to show it. I'm not saying this because I need anything, for I have learned how to be content in any circumstance. I know the experience of being in need and of having more than enough. I've learned the secret to being content in any and every circumstance, whether full or hungry, or whether having plenty or being poor. I can endure all these things through the power of the one who gives me strength. This Philippians 4:13 gets misapplied and misused. I got a buddy who sort of felt it as a flail, a punishment for years, because he was chronically ill, and he was like, why can't I do any of these things? through God who gives me strength. And I had to say to him, Chief, Paul is talking about his own experience, and the experience is not he does these things, i.e. he goes out and ministers to people. The thing that he does is content in any and every circumstances, whether full or hungry, or whether having plenty or being poor. And that the only way for Paul to reach that space is through the one who gives him strength. So, any of you out there who are like, what do I do with Philippians 4? And like, if I've got Christians in the audience who feel this is a bludgeon, guys, this is Paul, and this is Paul talking about contentment, not about activity. It's not about how many boxes he checks. It is about being well in what he has. If I was going to preach an epistle, I would preach that one. I think that we will not this time. All right, so that's the texts. The texts are selected. If I were a scholar of the Hebrew, the way that it would be nice if I had paid attention better in seminary, I would sit down and I would do a round on the Hebrew meaning plate. But I got to tell you guys, my Hebrew's a joke. I will dig into the Hebrew if I absolutely need to, but in this particular case, I think we're just going to let the translation stand. I can check a couple other translations and see if there are ambiguities or noteworthy things that catch my eye, but I think I'm not going to. I had my one weird one about curse bless God. Sat down on him, yeah. The stumbling block, the adversary departed from the presence of the Lord, and he struck Job with severe sores from the sole of his foot to the top of his head. I'm willing to bet those are the same sores that show up in 10 plagues of Egypt. Job took a piece of broken pottery to scratch himself and sat down. Job's wife said, Job's wife, the nameless, again, come on, guys. Girl just, like, this woman just had her 10 kids die. Give her a name. Are you still clinging to your integrity? Curse God and die. And Job said to her, you're talking like a foolish woman, and will we receive good from God, but not also receive bad? And in all this, Job didn't sin with his lips. Whole theme for Job of like, Job was willing to accept the bad things that happened to him, but thought they weren't fair and said so. And it's a whole experience there. Let's look at Matthew 6. And this is where I get into a better, like my Greek is much, much better than my Hebrew. I don't know that I've messed with, Bible Gateway Plus is where you're gonna, okay. So I could pay for Bible Gateway Plus. Hey, Bible Gateway, if you want us an advocate, hit me up. I'll talk your game up. But for the moment, being as I am sort of underemployed and it's not being my full-time gig, I'm going to go to Blue Letter Bible. So there's another website that does really good Greek and Hebrew resources. So I get to put in the same thing, Matthew 6. My search defaults to King James. I don't want the King James. I love doing the Vulgate. This is the Bible in Latin. It's a jerk move. I got a couple choices for, these are all English. This is Latin or other, but I want this Greek New Testament. If you hear the baby crying in the background, it's because he just woke up from his nap. I love that kid so much. Okay. All right. So if you've not dealt with Greek before, this is all going to be Greek to you. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to do the interlinear. So what I should have done from the first is grab the Blue Letter is rocking, King James. So I'm going to take the NIV from the King James. Now I need to redo the search. Okay. So then we have the whole thing, Matthew 6. And the way this works is you select the verse that you want to stare at. You go Tools, and it pops up the interlinear. And it's helpful, yeah. Diatuto lego humin. Therefore I say to you, do not merimnate. I remember this from seminary. I am pretty sure that the Greek word here for worry is the source of the English word marinate, uh, like to stew in something. Um, I'm going to check that. In fact, let's check it right now. Let's take a look. All right, merimnate, Strong's 3309. Let's. This is the kind of thing that gets me out of bed in the morning, I got to tell you. That's not true at all. But this is a thing that I really enjoy about preaching is the opportunity to go and look into linguistics with justice. All right, so French marine to brine. But that seems like you guys are ducking out way too early. So that's Wikipedia, but I want Wiktionary is what I really want because it's super speculative. Wiktionary, marinate. All right. English, likely from French marinade. Boo. Boo. That's sad. From French marinade, a pickle for fish. From marinade to pickle and sea brine. From Old French marine, of the sea. From Latin marinus, of the sea. From Latin mare, sea. From the Proto-Indo-European root, the sea. All right. That's sad. It's always fun when you think that these things, and also I should have noticed that it's an E and epsilon here rather than an alpha. So then what's going on with merimnate actually? Let's take a look. This is the second half. This is where it really gets real. Why are you even here listening to this guy talk about stuff in a language you don't know? All right. So merimnate shows up 3 times in 3 verses. Once in Matthew, once in Luke. Hey, check it out. Once in Philippians. Same word. Merimnate. And then twice in a different thing. And why do you worry? What do you worry about the rest? So yeah, we're definitely worrying about things. So I want the merimnao, the verb form, from merimna. Take thought, care, be careful, have care, be anxious, troubled with cares. This is what I really want. I want Thayer's Greek. Really, what I want is my Liddell and Scott Intermediate, but I haven't set up the camera yet to show you guys that. So you guys are just gonna have to deal with Thayer's, or I'll go to one of my other resources. Okay. Merimnao, to be troubled, to be anxious, made in merimnate. Collapse. Yeah, this is all very fun, but like, where's the... Yeah, you're telling me about how it's used in the Bible, Chief, but you're not telling me where... Okay, all right. So you guys get my other resource. They redid Perseus. And I forgot that you have to do the www. All right, so collections, texts, Greek and Roman materials. I'm going to scroll down for Liddell. Vulgate. Henry George Liddell. Robert Scott. I'm not going to do the full Greek English lexicon because I don't hate myself that much. Alphabetic letter. We're going to go to M. Yes, there are almost certainly better ways to do this, but sorry, tiny text here. Magadion, and we just selected. Okay, here we go. Merimnao. Care for, be anxious. Latin meditare. Okay. All right. What are you doing, Liddell and Scott? No information. You're not telling me anything I don't already know, boys. All right. Ancient Greek. Here we go. This is the good stuff. Cognates include Latin memor, to think, to recollect. Straight up. Diverbative of merimna. from Proto-Hellenic merimna, probably from Proto-Indo-Ukrainian to remember. Memoros. Mindful, remembering, mindful. Okay, so there's not a lot more here than there was, sort of, not more here than you could have guessed. And the thought is basically, I am anxious. Buddy in chat asks, why are we marinating? All right, we'll take you back to the story. So we're not marinating. Regrettably, I was very, very sad just now when I discovered this, that I think we should be marinating. It would be very convenient if we were. But what we are is we are marinao, which in this context is to think about, to take care for, to remember. And that's the core root here. So we're here in Matthew chapter 6. Do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, or about your body, what you will wear. I'm just going to do a scan of the Greek here. Do not worry about your psyche. Do not worry about your soul, your breath. Or hagete, what you're going to eat. Almost sort of your eating here. Aorist, active, subjunctive, second. What you will eat. Aorist, active. Aorist, active, subjunctive. So it has a little bit of the sense of what you will have, like what you have eaten, but not quite, not even that. Just what you, not. It's not terribly future. It's weird. Piete, what you will drink, and not about your body. Soma. Or about enduseste, what you will clothe yourself in. And not, like, boy, there's a lot of negation here. Is not, uchie, is not, yeah, so there should be there's a sort of end of a sentence here. Uchie psyche, is not life pleion more full than, whoa. OBS says it was disconnected and it's reconnecting. Did I hit a 1 hour thing? Did I jog something? Reconnection successful. Sorry about that. I don't know where you lost me. It might have been very angry about me saying something about play on. More. Is not life fuller than prophes, than food, and the body than clothing? Some good stuff in there. Okay, so we're going to skip on that. I think the mouse over on the Greek text is new, which I like. Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? I don't know, team. Are we more valuable than birds? Not sure. Can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? I actually want to check this one and say, are we doing the same merimno? Yes. We're still worrying. Is there any one of you who worrying can change? The same root as dynamic here. Can prosthenai add prosthenai, which I think must be the same root as prosthetic. Can add one helikian. So this is epi. Pechun, yeah. What hena pechun, 1 hour to your life. At least 1 cubit. Zachmort says, my favorite implication. People who wish to add at least 1 cubit to their height is a demographic that needs addressing. Man, the Hebrews, they were tall, and Zacchaeus, he was small. We got bros for this. And why do you worry about clothes? See, so the traditional, I think, like so often my head, like when I'm hearing verses in my brain, it's the King James just because it's such cultural cachet. So I have to sometimes... And about clothing. Why do you merimnate? Why do you worry? Observe. Katamathete. Like really, like check out kata. That kata is like very emphatic, complete. Like not just matete. Don't just look, but like observe. Sorry, I want to dive into that for a moment. Consider. Yeah, that's the consider is the version of that I have. It was katamethan from met with Herodotus down, especially to learn thoroughly. That kata is thoroughly. Oh, so it's not look at. I was because I was like, why isn't this cut up though? Why doesn't this is look closely? But it's learn, like polymath or mathematics. Consider feels way too passive, way too light. A feeling for this. It really is like learn, like grok. Grok actually is the sense of this word for those nerds out there with enough hindline to get that word. Grok this. Like, grok the lilies of the field. How exactly Krina is lilies. I feel like Krina is also something else, but I'm gonna of the argu of the agru, so of the field, same root as agriculture. How they grow. Oxanucine. How they grow themselves. I'm not gonna. I'm gonna fall into that one, and it's not a good look. They don't capucin. They don't work, and they don't nethusin. They don't spin. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all of his splendor. Are we back? Yeah, it looks like we're back. Sorry about that, and I don't know if I'm going to have to do this as two separate streams. What exactly that was, because it didn't want to reconnect. Zach asks, I'm sorry, Zach, I know who you are, so it's very hard for me not to just like call you out, bro. Question, is this the topic prescribed for this week, or for those who follow such things are mostly timely? Yeah, no, this is timely. This was a decision that I made. All right, back in. Yet I tell you, Lego de Umin. Yet I say to you that not even Solomon, in passe. I'm gonna have to figure out if I'm like overheating or something. I'll bet you I'm overheating. Actually, that's a good bet. And if that's the case, we may stop off soon. In all his glory, on all his duxe. Yeah. All right. That's my third disconnect, which says to me I got a network problem on my end. And I'm going to go fix that. But we've got, for those missing at home, I got my sort of core stuff done. We're gonna preach on Job, chapter 1, verses 18 to 22, Job 2, 7 through 10, Matthew 6, 25 to 34, and then the sermon title is "This Too Shall Pass." So that's the sermon prep process. We're going to do it again next week because I'm preaching again, but that time I'll probably use the lectionary, and you'll get a little bit more me thinking and wrestling about what I'm going to do with the text. But thank you for joining, Zach. I don't know if literally anybody else joined, but nope, just Zach, and not even Zach anymore because we had some stream problems. But this is, this is the first run, and I had fun. Bye, everybody.